Hello. Just wanted to send one out. Been doing a little bit more looking into the Haarp program and finding more and more that the Haarp program is the main culprit behind a lot of the low frequency sort of attacks that were dealt with bombardment that we deal with every day. You've discovered that the Haarp program started out as a way to replace what they called backscatter radar, which this was originally, backscatter radar was a type of radar system that they used to see over the horizon or triangulate over the horizon so they could get, views of incoming objects over the horizon. And originally the purpose was to monitor for any type of intercontinental ballistic missiles that maybe Russia or China decided to launch. And the Haarp program was set up to replace the backscatter, because the backscatter, it would see images or projectiles from long distances, but as they got closer, the image would sort of fade and they couldn't see it anymore, so they wouldn't be able to track it. Well, the Haarp program allowed for them to be able to see these objects much clearer at much closer range, and they were also able to monitor low altitude cruise missiles. So originally the idea was that they were going to be monitoring these high altitude long range ICBMs, but with Haarp they were able to monitor the low range stuff too. And so what they did is they started to heat up the ionosphere, and basically what they do is they're able to heat up a section of it and then sort of push that section. So if you figure like a section of the ionosphere that's got like a 30-mile radius, and they affect the magnetic flux lines that are natural to the Earth, and so they heat up this ionosphere and affect these flux lines. And so if you can imagine an area about 30 miles in diameter that they push a couple hundred feet out into space, well, when they do that, they create this column. And so what happens is they have to then, the lower levels of the atmosphere rush in to fill that void. And so that column that they create has now contained your regular atmosphere. And so any objects that are flying at the edge of space, when they run into this sort of swath of lower level atmosphere, well then the electronics of that particular projectile, whether it be a missile or even a satellite, the electronics get fried and it crashes. And so that was the idea originally behind Haarp with its developer. But when they discovered that when they pushed that ionosphere up, it shifted the jet stream. And it shifted the jet stream in such a manner that it caused a storm front in Texas to be shifted and moved to Florida, where in Florida there was actually a tornado occurred in Orlando. This was, several years back, of course, but this is what they discovered when they found, by heating the ionosphere and shifting this column into the atmosphere, well, they actually pushed a storm front. And so what they do is they send these high frequency radio waves, and it causes I think it's called a cyclometric action. The description of it is like a corkscrew, where the corkscrew starts out real wide and then it corkscrews down to a point. And so they started using this Haarp program and sending these radio frequencies up in this cyclometric action, and they were trying to monitor exactly how this stuff was working. And so they decided to send barium-laden missiles into space and exploded these missiles into the upper ionosphere in order to see how the Haarp system was working. And so, of course, through their, experiments, they discovered that if they were to pulse these frequencies that they send to the ionosphere, the pulses would then reflect off of the ionosphere, returning to the Earth as low-frequency waves. And so these low-frequency waves then would be transferred into the Earth, and they operate at a hertz of like 1 to 20 hertz. And it's the same frequency level that the brain operates at, is 1 to 20 hertz. So they found that as they were reflecting these or pulsing these waves off of the ionosphere, they would reflect back to Earth in these low frequency waves, which they could then use to manipulate, or what they call entrain, or have brain entrainment in these studies that they were doing. And this brain entrainment is what they were using to manipulate emotions. So, I mean, it's not like they flip a switch and they turn on a beam and then you're a zombie. But what they do is they turn on their switch, they pulse these pulses into the atmosphere, which then return to the Earth and intensify low vibrational feelings, anger, animosity, rage, jealousy, division. All those kinds of negative emotions are then amplified by the amplification of the low frequency waves that are deflected back to the Earth. And so this brain entrainment is part of some of these MK Ultra programs, and they also get what they call frequency following response, or FFR. And this FFR is if you were able to, and these are some of the experiments they did, is they would have subjects sit down and they would put headphones on, and the human ear can hear up to like 24,000 hertz. And so what they do is they would pump, for example, they would have a set of headphones on and they would pump 15,000 hertz into one ear and then 15,007 hertz into the other ear. So the 15,000 would cancel each other out and they were left with this pulsing 7 hertz, which was undetectable by the subject. However, they could use this pulsing 7 hertz to then create the brain entrainment, and they could manipulate the brain to enter into different states, because they have what they call these different states of awareness. There's like a delta state, a theta state, beta, alpha, and that's the type of the brain waves that are being emitted, or the state of consciousness that the brain is in. Like when you're in your REM sleep, your brain is in delta. When you're sitting in front of the TV, vegged out, and somebody's screaming at you that dinner's ready, and they come yelling at you, hey, 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 and you're like, what? They say, well, I've been calling you for dinner for 10 minutes. I didn't hear you. That's because you were in an alpha state, vegging out in front of the TV. And so they've discovered through, all these various programs that by deflecting these low frequency vibrations, they can actually cause this brain entrainment and this frequency following response. And so they can actually manipulate human behavior and feelings. And so what they're doing is they've been using these Gwen towers, which are what we would call cell towers. So they use these Gwen towers, they use the cell towers, and then they use something else that's called Lily waves. And these Lily waves are piggybacked onto your electrical system at home. And they emit these low frequency vibrations that assist the brain in going into the alpha state. And so what we're discovering is that by manipulating these low frequencies, they can manipulate human behavior in the sense that they can perpetuate, all these negative emotions, because the negative emotions keep people divided. They keep people in a state of needing a savior. So they use these control systems like religion, one of the greatest and most, the oldest control systems ever invented. And so when people are bombarded with this sense of despair and hopelessness, well, then they have to turn to their religion to, then bolster their hope. Whereas if we can, make people aware, which leads me to another subject that, people in America don't understand, that Abomination is actively seeking to relinquish control of the internet to an international governing body. And this international governing body, it consists of countries, including China, who severely censor their internet, and North Korea, who severely censor their internet. So this information that we have available, and this information that we're passing along to each other, and these finer details, so we can learn more and more and more about it, the potential is there that we won't be able to access this information for very long. Because they're in debates and discussions right now about how to relinquish this control to this international governing body. And from what I understand, it's supposed to take place October 1st, before the elections. And so it's another step, another phase to this NWO. So there's a guy, his name is Nick Begich. He used to work at the Haarp program, and for 20 years, he's been trying to explain to people how this system works and trying to get the word out there on the brain entrainment, the mind control. Nick Begich, there's another man, his name is Simon Parks, who has a lot of good information on this. You can also Google, if you just go on YouTube and just type in internet control, and there's a plethora of stories describing how Obama is trying to relinquish control of the internet. So I would ask that people, while we still have the opportunity to, start your own YouTube channels and get videos out there. Who gives a shit what people think? Who gives a shit about the comments? Because people are going to ridicule you. They're going to call you names. They're going to insult you. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you might catch a hold of somebody who needs some information that you've got, and that might lead to somebody else. But we're under attack right now, and we've got to at least get the information out to each other to spread awareness on what's happening, so we can be a little bit better prepared to deal with it. So I just thought I'd get that out there. So I hope this helps, and have a good day.